you so much.
It's all yours, of course.
And I lied. I am doing the FAFSA workshop tomorrow. I just checked my calendar.
Okay.
Yeah. We have a lot of events going on for financial aid, including stuff at the high schools. So lots of opportunities for everybody to get their FAFSAs done, including next week in class. That's going to be our focus. So I would say for next week, just to prepare, there's only really two things that you need. One is make sure that you remember your FSA ID. That's that username that you use to sign into your FAFSA and sign it at the end. And if you're under 24 or otherwise dependent student, your parents need one too. Probably remember from last year. So that would be my main suggestions is get your FSA ID ready, make sure you remember the username and password. And the same thing with your parents, make sure that they remember because they're going to have to come in and sign it. And what we're going to do next week is try to get all our FAFSAs done while we're here in class so you don't have to mess with it when you're at home, you know. And then right when we're done, maybe you can take it to your parents and have them put their signature on it, and then it's done for all of next year. But for today, we're talking about budgeting and credit, which I think is the most exciting topic because it basically teaches you how to get all those things that you want in life that cost a lot of money. You know, it's expendable, it's disposable. You'll have $1,000 today, and you can very easily find 1,000 ways to spend it. You know, and it'll be gone before you know it. So it's all about having a spending plan, and that's what we're going to talk about for most of today. So let's do a couple of questions to see where you guys are at on these topics. How comfortable is everybody with discussing money? 100% comfortable. Raise your hand. That's great. That's awesome. How many people are less than 100% comfortable discussing money? That's honest. I like that. How many people are less than 50% comfortable discussing money? That's good. That's good. I like that comfort level because we're going to talk about that a lot today. And that means discussing it with everybody, with our peers and everything. You don't got to tell everybody exactly how much you make, but this is something that there's been a stigma against it a lot of the time on not being good at managing your money, like it makes you a bad person or something like that. It's not true. Money is a finite resource. It is not easy to deal with. But if we discuss it, you know, like we're doing in class today, more normalizes it so that we can improve on it and be better in the future. So just get right into it. How many people think there's something to gain from increasing your budgeting and credit IQ? How many people think it's worthless to increase your budgeting and credit IQ? Obvious question. How many people have heard the term financial fragility? It's kind of a new one. I hadn't heard it before, but what do you think it is?
Like how financially secure you are.
Mm-hmm. Good point. Okay, no problem. It's good talking about it. Financial fragility. So let's talk about it a little bit. In 2018, Ohio State showed that a survey on student financial wellness showed that students responded that it would be pretty unlikely for them to be able to come up with $400 in the event of a financial emergency during the year. Just $400. That would be kind of a stretch for me. How many people can just pull $400 out of nowhere right now if they had an emergency? That's really good. That's really good. But frankly, it's difficult. You know, we have so many other expenses and bills, and you know, all of a sudden your car breaks down, and how are you going to get to school in the snow? You know, that's what we're looking at. Super common. So 56.8%, more than half of students answered that would be pretty unlikely for them to be able to come up with a $400, you know, check in the event of an emergency. And furthermore, on this study, students reported that their actual reported financial behavior in the last 12 months included making impulsive purchases. I mean, I think that that's just reported. I think that a lot of us, maybe probably closer to 80, 90, 100% of us have made an impulsive purchase while we're standing in the grocery store line and looking at all the candy and stuff like that. You know, even if it's small, still that last minute impulsive purchase is a difficult one to avoid. Another one is never or rarely keeping track of their spending. So when we talk about budgeting and spending plans, we're going to talk about doing it on the regular, not just even once a month, but more than that is actually ideal. Overdrawing your bank account. Oh, I've done that so many times. And only 20% of people reported that they'd done it. I think that's probably still underreported, And then making late payments on bills, 23.4%. Think that's also underreported. Frankly, as you get older and you get busier with stuff, I think it's actually more difficult to keep on track with your bills, as opposed to when you're younger and you just don't have the money to pay them always. Everybody has their troubles, right? So, more importantly on this survey, 7 out of 10 respondents reported feeling stressed about their personal finances. That's just universal, isn't it? Unless we have so much money we don't have to worry about it, then we're all going to feel stressed at one point or another. Sometimes I sit down to do my budget or my spending plan every month, and I'm like, oh, I don't want to do this. I'm going to go clean the house. Something like that. So it's common, and the way to avoid that is just to keep doing it and get better and better at it. And the more you do it, the less stressed you'll be. Let's see. Moving on to the next one, away from the sad pig. Today, we're going to talk a little bit more about these pieces of managing your money and your credit. So number 1, where's your money coming from and where is it going? So that's the basic budgeting, just money in and money out. 2, financial goals. How many people have a financial goal that's written down? Or maybe multiple financial goals written down? Nice. Written down, I usually write them down on my budget. You can write them down in a book. You can write them down on the notes in your phone. We'll talk a little bit more about that. There's a lot of flexible options for you for doing that. And spending plan or budget. We'll go over that. And credit, lastly. So this next part asks me to make you stand up and take steps forward and backward and stuff depending on your answers to these questions. I'm not going to do that because first off, we don't have a great class set up for it, but second off, I feel like, this is a difficult topic, money, and I don't think everybody's as comfortable as we all let on if we're going to let it out to the whole room. So why don't you all take out just a piece of note paper and a pen, and we're going to do this with X's and O's instead. So for take a step forward, we're going to just put O's, and that's going to be our tally, and we're going to get our score. For take a step backward, we're going to do X's, okay? So write an O down in the past year if you have, oh no, this is backward, this is X's. Oh no, it's going to do it like that. It's just not done very well on that. Okay, here we go. So take a step forward. On this side, O's. Take a step backward, X's. Put an O down if you have used a spending plan or budget. And put an X down if you have ever not paid a bill on time. And put an O down if you have paid down a loan or credit card balance all the way to 0. So you spent a bunch of money on your credit card and you paid it all off. Put an X down if you've ever bounced a check. Do people even use checks anymore? I do. I have to for rent and things like that. But I've definitely bounced a check previously. Have you ever saved for a major purchase? A home, a business, education, retirement, maybe a big vacation or something like that, or a car. So put an O down if you save for a major purchase. And put an X down if you've ever carried over a credit card balance. So have you ever had a credit card and it's got 20% interest on it and you're just trying to make the payments and it's not working, and then this new shiny credit card comes along and it says 0% interest for a certain amount of months, and you're like, oh, that's better, and moved one balance over to the other. If you've ever done that, put down an X. All right, and put down an O if you've ever set aside money for unplanned expenses. And an X if you've ever used one credit card to pay another loan or card balance. So, credit card number 1 is almost maxed out, but I don't have money to pay it. So, I have another credit card. Pay with that. Have you ever tracked your spending habits? If you have, put down an O. Have you ever maxed out a credit card balance? Yes, ma'am.
Quick question.
Yeah.
approved for a credit card?
Mhm.
Do I just like
Yeah,
make
those are all
those?
Yeah, if you have never had a credit card, then a lot of these credit card questions, you can just put down nothing. You don't have to put down anything, okay? And next, have you ever, all you people who said you had a financial goal, give yourself a no. And I think this should be the last one. Has anyone ever kept a purchase a secret and not told anyone, like their parents or significant other? Especially when you get to significant other land, man, it's a big foul. All right, there's a couple more. Have you ever discussed money management with your family members? And have you ever consolidated your debts more than once? So examples of consolidating a debt is doing the credit card move, refinancing a house or a car, things like that. And if you've ever borrowed money from a friend, I think it means or a family member, but also it's probably extra bad if you borrowed money from a friend of a family member, but it probably means or. All right, so how are we doing on our scores? So how many people have more X's? Once you start to, how many people have more X's than O's? So it's like you're doing a canceling amount.
Yeah, 5-1.
Yeah, that once you get older, it's really hard. Those X's, they happen all the time. Yeah. So how many people have way more O's? Good job. All right. That gets much more difficult to maintain as you get older. So keep an eye out for it. All right. So next, money management behaviors. Oh no, was that the last one? Yeah, now we're on where does your money come from? Okay. So where does your money come from is a big part of the whole budgeting and spending plan equation. That's actually the hardest part, is a lot of us don't have enough money coming in, for all the things that we need going out. So, based on your responses to the last one, hopefully shouldn't be doing too bad. But has anybody ever experienced more month than money? So basically you're going through the month, you get your paycheck at the beginning of the month, and then all of a sudden come like the 14th, you're like, ooh, I don't have enough for all the expenses at the end of the month. Anybody ever experienced that? Like every month here. It's like every month for me. It's a constant struggle. More month than money. So we're going to talk about this a little bit, I think in small groups, and we're going to maybe just pair up with the person next to you or behind you, and I'd like for you guys to come up with ideas for income opportunities. So basically we're talking about where does money come from? What are places money can come from besides your job? Some of us might have money coming from family. Some of us might have money coming from sales. So I'm going to give you guys about 3 minutes. So it's going to be a quick list. So partner up and talk about income opportunities. Where do we get money from? All right. This group. What kind of opportunity? You be next. What kind of opportunities did you find?
Like where my money comes from?
Yep.
Well, most of it is from work and family and graduations.
Good stuff. All right. How about you guys?
Allowance.
Allowance. Okay. Anybody else? How about you ladies? Nice. Good job. Scholarships. How about you in the back? Work. Okay. Good stuff. Good. Anybody have something new that they want to share? Yes, sir.
Financial aid.
Nice. Financial aid. Yes.
Investments.
Investments. Excellent. Anybody else want to share a different one? All right. We're going to go over a couple. Oh, yes. One more.
Benefits.
What's that?
Benefits from like the county, like the government.
Yep. That's good. That's a good one, too. If you can get them. All right. So job. Yay, job. You win. Internship. So work. Work study. Got a couple people on work study in here. Very happy to see it. Tuition reimbursement is an interesting one. Maybe an interesting plan for your future. So tuition reimbursement is a type of plan where your work will kind of pay for your school. Usually you have to pay it up front. But when they pay you back, and then you have a little bit of additional income to help you towards your educational goals. When I was getting my master's degree, I was thinking master's degrees are like $80,000. There's no way I'm not paying for this. So I worked at University of San Francisco, and they had tuition remission, which is where they actually pay it up front. It's not like if you pay, they pay you back. That's something I highly recommend if you're worried about how to pay for school. Tuition remission. Go work for a college, and they will pay you to go to school. Tax refund. Nobody said tax refund. That's only once a year. It's not tax time. We forget. We're at the other end of tax refund land. Unless you're doing the extension, then you might have one coming soon. Grants and scholarships. Good job. All right. So we had a couple of good answers there. I have another good answer for you guys.
Okay, listen up.
Who's familiar with the term side hustle?
Oh.
Yeah, side hustle, right? So you have your job, and then you have something that's kind of a hobby that also makes you money. So I was just telling Scott, I can't believe I'm telling you guys this because I kind of don't want to let it out because I'm never going to be able to take a snow day, but I just bought a truck with 2 snow plows on it. It was only $1,000. I can pay that back, $50 a day plowing people's, parking lots or whatever, and it'll pay for itself in a month, and then you're just making extra money. What's that?
What about the field involved in driving?
Like what? Like you driving on Yeah, it's a truck, a whole truck. So if you take the snow plow off, I can still drive it all around, but it has plows on the front of it.
Yeah.
And 2, so if one breaks, I can still make money with my snowplow truck. So another thing, anybody collect stuff? No collectors? We don't do that anymore? My boyfriend collects model trains. And I'll tell you what, even good economy, bad economy, it's crazy to me. Those things sell. They sell. They sell better than drugs. Like, people will buy them, like, all day. And they're these little teeny trains. It's like $300, So, side hustle, collecting stuff, snow plowing. There's a lot of snow around here to be plowed. All right, we're getting back on track. We have other side exercises where you guys can chat about money and budget and credit, which I assume is what you're chatting about. Money and budget and credit. All right, opportunities to increase your income. All right, let's think about where does our money go. We thought about money coming in. Now, here's the fun part. Money going out, spending money. Where does all the money go? So usually we think of money in a couple of different categories. There's periodic expenses that kind of occurs not every month, maybe like once every 3 months or twice a year, like your tuition payments or taxes, things like that. And then we have flexible. What's a flexible expense?
Change.
Like a hobby, yeah. Or like something that you can kind of do without, like groceries, like buying people Christmas presents, flexible type of expenses. Your Netflix, if you pay for your own Netflix, which most of us probably don't. Maybe your music, if you pay for unlimited music or something like that, you do Spotify or you do Amazon or you do iMusic or whatever the heck it is. Flexible expenses, things that we don't necessarily need. And then lastly, fixed expenses. That's the hard ones. That's the ones that you got to pay every month. So let's go over them real quick. Here's some examples of periodic expenses. Car registration, once a year. Tuition and fees, like we said. Car maintenance, when your car breaks down. People's birthdays. Flexible expenses. So you got your groceries, your entertainment, going out with your friends. Hobbies, somebody got the hobbies. Dining out. Personal care, I don't know, I'm not a fan of that, but we'll let it go. Did I miss the last one? No. Oh yeah, because it's all gone before you do your fixed expenses. We did the first 2, we did it backwards. Yeah, Kat?
I have a question.
Yes, ma'am.
Wouldn't groceries be like, depending how much you spend, but wouldn't it be like a fixed expense, like you need food, right?
I kind of feel that way too, yeah. I kind of feel like groceries should be a fixed expense. They put it here under flexible because I guess it can be...
Like how much you spend on it?
Yeah, exactly. Like if you needed to reduce your expenses, you could be like, oh, well, I guess I'm eating rice and beans this month, But it's not, yeah, you're kind of right. Yes, sir?
Would it be like a non-fixed expense just because the fact that, of course, you always need to buy food, but the price of food changes, so the expense is gonna change? And like how much food you
The
have
price of
going
food
on?
definitely changes over time, depending on where you live. Or like restaurant business is a little bit more seasonal, exactly, yeah. So, I don't know, it's kind of between the two categories. You definitely need food, but yeah, you can adjust it sometimes, you know? But sometimes it's honestly not that hard to adjust, it's not that easy to adjust, you know? I mean, I tried to pare down my grocery budget like month after month, and it's like, it's not really there yet, you know? So this is the important ones, the fixed expenses, the ones that if you don't pay your rent or mortgage, you don't have a place to live. You don't pay your car payment, you don't get to have a car. You know, you don't pay your cell phone bill, nobody's going to be able to contact you or text you, and it's difficult, you know. And interestingly enough, what's the thing on here that maybe doesn't seem like it exactly belongs? Maybe. Savings. I thought that too. That was interesting. But it should be on here, and we're going to explain why. Yes, sir. What's your question?
Oh, I thought you asked what was in the book.
Yeah. Were you going to say savings too?
No, I was going to say the cell phone.
I was gonna
The
say
cell phone?
too.
Well, you don't
I don't know. That's a good point. You don't need the coolest cell phone, and you don't need the best cell phone unlimited plan. So that also kind of rides the two categories where it might be kind of a flexible expense.
So what if you don't have a kid? I mean, you have a kid.
What do you say? What?
What if you don't have a kid?
If you don't have a kid, then that one luckily is not on there for you, and it is very expensive. It is like a second rent payment. I'll tell you, it is a big expense. So everybody keep that in mind before you breathe. Sorry, I didn't mean to say it like that. I didn't mean to. If any of you guys have kids, I'm sure they're awesome. But I'm also sure that you spend a lot on childcare, you know, because it's a thing. So let's go ahead. I think there's another activity here coming up pretty soon. That's gone. And can you guys think of any other fixed expenses or flexible expenses or anything like that we may have missed? I think it was pretty comprehensive. That was a pretty good overall list. So remember the term financial fragility about not having $400 to meet an emergency expense? That's why savings is on here. So way back in the day, when I was first starting budgeting and stuff like that, when I was kind of in college, you know, and coming out of high school, I learned the term paying yourself first. So if you treat savings if you treat savings like it's a fixed expense and you make sure that you put away money in your savings while you're paying your rent and while you're paying your car payment and your phone bill and everything like that, before you start spending on your flexible expenses and your fun things, that's how you get to that place where you have the $400 for the emergency expense, or hopefully even more. And it's also how you get to your financial goals, which we're going to talk about in a little bit. And it's probably one of the more important things to take away from this whole thing today. It doesn't matter as much the dollar amount, it more matters about the consistency. So even if you can only afford to put like $25, $30 in your savings, you've done your budget and that's all that's really allowed to you, go ahead and do it. Don't wait until after you've already spent it all on fun, immediate things. So it's asking me to ask you guys, do you guys know the difference between a need and a want? I know it seems like a silly question, but let's put it into words. Who wants to say it? Yes, sir.
Well, okay, I'm in economics and we say that there's no such thing as a want. I mean, as a need.
No such thing as a need, huh?
Like,
Interesting.
economically speaking, you don't need anything you want, like, say food, you want to buy food, so because you want to stay alive, you don't need.
You don't need to stay alive, but it helps.
So, it's nice.
That is true.
Like, financially speaking, you always say that, like, there's no such thing as a need.
You know, that is definitely true. And there's always ways that you can kind of pare down your spending. Yeah.
I gotta go ahead and say he's wrong. Because you need to, like, if you have a kid or something, you need to take care of them. You
Well,
can't
you
just, like,
want to
get
take care of it.
No, that's not how that
No, if I don't
works.
take care of my kid, I'm gonna.
That's not how that works.
My kids get sick.
I think it's an important concept to kind of think of it like that, and that there's always flexibility even in, say, your housing. So let me throw this one at you, and this one is not in the pre-prescribed text, but I'm going to throw it out there at you anyway. Last year, surprise, I lost my job, and I live in the Bay Area, and my rent was $2,400 a month, and I said, this is not going to work. Yeah, exactly, right? Well, it didn't go that smoothly, so because I didn't have the job here yet. So basically, I was like, okay, you are not going to be able to afford even your housing, even your rent, let alone all the other things you need to buy. So I gave up my lease, and I moved into a tiny vintage trailer, 17-foot vintage trailer with my boyfriend and my 3 pets. So, you know, housing is up there as a fixed expense. However, I made that a flexible thing. And all of a sudden, I didn't have a housing payment. I paid $2,500 for a 17-foot vintage trailer and fixed it up so that I could sort of live in it. Had a bathroom, had a shower. It's a pretty good deal, you know. So it covers the basics. But do you want to? You know, is that a need? Is that a want? It's not very comfortable living in a trailer, and also it causes all kinds of residency issues for all your other bills. But we won't even get into that. But it's a good mindset to have that everything is flexible. But yeah, if you have a kid or you have pets, it's like, you know, you're kind of stuck there. You kind of really do have to take care of them unless you want them to be taken away, you know, for somebody else to take care of. Yeah, it kind of is. So here's what the text says about needs and wants. What is a priority? Essential for survival, like a house is not essential for survival, but dang, it really helps, especially if you're trying to be a successful student and put college first. Yes, Kat?
Clothing, water.
Clothing, water. Oh my God, water is super much of a need. Part of my travels in my little teeny trailer was in the Sacramento Delta. There is not drinkable water there sometimes. Yeah, sometimes there really isn't. Yeah, there's just not a lot of services out there in rural areas. I'm sure you guys, like everybody in the state is freaking out because PG&E is turning off their electricity. Who here is worried about a little blackout?
I got
Nobody.
mine turned off.
Yeah, it happens all the time here, you know. So in rural areas, there's less services. So yeah, I did experience that water being a need, and it's not always there for you. So essential for survival, needs, taking care of your kids, things like that. Wants, extras that add to the enjoyment of life. That's how these guys are defining needs and wants. It's all about choice. What are you willing to give up to get what you want? I would like to not have an eviction on my record, so I gave up my house, you know? So it's all about that trade-off, and really the only person who can answer it is you as an individual and what you're really most comfortable with, right? So let's do, by a show of hands, how many of us have our goals? Again, financial goals. Nice. So, good job. You want to say what your goal is?
Like my financial goal, like to be able to pay all my bills per month and still come out with savings.
That is a good one. That is a really good financial goal. That's an excellent one. Anybody else want to tell us a financial goal?
I just want to be comfortable with my money.
Yeah.
I just want to be comfortable.
For sure. How about a financial goal like a large purchase financial goal type of thing? Yeah.
I need a car.
That's a good one. A car. Yes.
Property.
Property is a really good one, and we're going to talk about that later as well. So, while we're thinking about financial goals, I'm going to read a quote to you. A dream written down with a date becomes a goal. A goal broken down into steps becomes a plan. And a plan backed by action makes your dreams come true. And the hard thing about the financial goal thing is it's kind of a long road, whereas the immediate things that you want, like that chocolate bar or that, you know, that really cute shirt or pair of pants or that whatever the heck you want that's not that expensive, there's a lot of those. And they really interfere with your whole big old financial goals, don't they?
Yeah.
Yeah. So how many people have heard of SMART model financial goals? Yes, sir. No, that's okay. No worries. I don't think it's even going to go over the acronym here. I think it's just saying it's a smart thing to do. So, SMART goals. Let's see. Specific. Oh, they are going to do the acronym. Awesome. Okay, so they're specific. Exactly what do you want to achieve? They're measurable, like how long will it take to get there? Establish benchmarks, say, oh, by, by December I'm going to have this much towards my financial goal, and by June I'm going to be ready to do it. Usually what happens is you end up just falling short of your date, but you end up getting it like a couple months later. It still worked out fine. Usually I figure if you're not missing your goals every once in a while, maybe you need better goals. Attainable. So break your goal down into small attainable steps by creating an action plan. It can be as simple as I'm going to put away $25 a month into my savings before I start spending on my flexible things. Relevant. So make sure that you are motivated to achieve this goal and it's still relevant to you. You may establish a goal today and then your whole life may change, and then all of a sudden your goal isn't necessarily as relevant as it was. If you have a major life change like a move, or you have a kid, or maybe you're going to go to a different college or something like that, your goals can change. So make sure it's always keeping track of them and making sure you're on track to something good. And then time bound is the last one. You want to set a specific deadline by which you want to achieve this goal. All right. So here's some examples of financial goals. We already kind of talked a little bit about ours, but to have a good emergency fund, to live below your income, which is the same as be able to pay off all your bills and still have money for savings. Reducing your debt. So maybe some of us have credit cards and stuff like that. I just told you I lost my job last year, so I definitely do. That's part of my financial goal, is to reduce debt. We're going to talk about that a little bit more in the credit module as well. Travel. Sometimes it's real nice just to say, I think I want to go to South Africa in 2 years with my friend, and I'm going to save up this much per month so that we can buy our tickets on this date. Starting a business. So that was something for the snowplow. I had to figure out, okay, this is not that much for $1,000 for a crappy truck. Not that much, but I don't have it right now. So I need to get there so that I can start snowplowing business or whatever it is. All right, so I know I've been talking a big game about budgeting, but now we're going to say no to the budget. No more budget, because it's a sad and boring word, and it makes us really anxious when we're about to sit down to do it, so we avoid it and clean our whole house and stuff like that. No, we're calling it a spending plan. It's much more fun. That's fun, right? Everybody loves to spend, so we're going to have a plan for how we're going to spend. 3-step spending plan. We're going to make our own little spending plans right now, and I have a worksheet for you.
What we spend on it per month? What's the amount that we right now?
Yeah, usually we're doing it by month. So this is all the stuff by month, unless, you can kind of do it your own way. Like if you feel more comfortable with doing it every 2 weeks, say if you get paid every 2 weeks, then you can do that as well, but usually you do by month. So you identify your sources of income. The where's your money going worksheet is your monthly expenses. And then you get to determine how much money you have left over at the end of each month. All right, so I'll give you guys another maybe 5 minutes to do that one. You take your time. I'll set the timer. On our spending plans. Did it make anybody anxious or nervous? Anybody feel the need to go clean their whole house instead of doing this? No, everybody felt pretty good? Get it back.
Okay,
Get it back.
refocus.
Refocusing. Talking about spending plans. All right. So did anybody have difficulty making their spending plan work and having extra money left over at the end? No? Nobody did? Yeah, some of us did. I see some of us shaking our head. Yeah.
That doesn't mean that it equates to real life.
That's true. Well, you're supposed to be doing your real life one, though. You're not making it up. Well, good. I'm so glad that you're doing well. Good for you. No, I'm joking. I'm sorry. I'm joking. But, did anybody have any questions about it? So here we're like doing it on paper, and that's a good way to kind of feel it out in the beginning and feel out where you are in terms of your income and your expenditures, and whether they're working out or whether you need to increase income or reduce some of your expenses. If you guys aren't a big fan of doing it manually on paper, there are a bunch of technological tools that you can use to help you out with this. Anybody ever heard of budgeting apps like mint.com? Yeah? So there's a bunch of cool budgeting apps. Some of them actually link right up to your bank account. So they actually, like, in real time help you budget or stop you from spending in certain categories, things like that. So Mint is probably the most popular one if you want to do that. That'll help you budget a little bit easier. There's one called Albert that it actually helps you save as well. So it actually has an FDIC insured savings account tied to it, and it automatically saves the amount that you want every month, and it gives you rewards for saving as well. So for every $100 that you save, it gives you $1. You know, not that much, but almost like the keep the change savings plans that you have with your bank that puts all the extra cents from your purchases into a savings account. That's kind of a cool little extra thing. So there's a bunch of ones like that, but me personally, I really just like to use either Excel or Google Sheets. And you can just set it up with all the formulas. This is all my income sources. Sum them, add them up at the bottom. And then you have your next column. This is all my expenses. Same thing, add them up and then do the math, income minus expenses, and it'll tell you how much you have left over. That's kind of a nice middle ground between having to do it on paper like this and the budgeting apps that really kind of do everything for you. So maybe you guys explore that and decide what works best for you. If you're like me and you're kind of a control freak and you want to know everything that's going on, maybe you err more on the side of doing the Google Sheets. Or if you're like, oh man, I just need to curb my spending and not be spending so much and be saving a little bit, maybe you look at the apps. So we're going to switch gears a little bit now. Come on. All right, we're going to switch gears and talk about credit. So this is actually kind of an exciting world, credit, because again, like saving, it helps you get those large purchases that you really want. And sometimes there can be good credit and there can be bad credit. You know, some loans that you can take that actually improve your credit score, improve your life situation, and then some that don't. So we'll talk about that as well. So who cares about credit? Sometimes you don't, but if you're looking for a job, employers sometimes will run your credit, you know, to see if really, I guess it's more in financial, or if you're interested in FBI or DOJ, or you're interested in, like higher level police work and things like that, or investigative work, they'll always check your credit. But other employers do, private employers, because basically they want to make sure that you're in a decent financial situation. So maybe you're not stealing from them is kind of the ugly truth, you know. That's how they think of it, unfortunately. So employers really do look at credit. Lenders that lend us money for things like your house or your car or any of those really large purchases you don't have like all the cash together for right now. And of course, landlords. Landlords will run your credit. Your phone company, your cell phone company will run your credit to see if you're allowed to get the newest next iPhone or not. So lots of reasons why to keep it in good, healthy shape. So we're going to talk a little bit. I'm going to let you guys talk a little bit more amongst yourself. Maybe partner up with the person next to you and talk about the advantages and disadvantages of credit. And we're going to give this one just 2 minutes. And then if you guys could come up with, say, 3 things, 3 advantages and 3 disadvantages of using credit. Ready, go. Advantages and disadvantages. How about you ladies? Did you want to give me one or the other?
You can buy anything you want.
You can buy anything you want. All right, cool. I like that. All right, how about you guys?
An advantage is it boosts your credit score.
Nice, very good, that's true. One more. Yes, you, sir.
It opens opportunities for loans and purchases.
That's true, absolutely. Those are really good answers. So we have a lot of good examples, and I just passed out another worksheet for you. Are you credit ready? You know, I think before we get into this next one, I'm going to have you do the little are you credit ready? All right. So the text wants me to have us share our scores. I don't think I'm going to do that. Really, I think that this is more of an important exercise to be more self-aware about your spending habits and, you know, how you handle certain little situations and things. So that's something just to kind of keep for yourself and let that inform our whole discussion today. Now we're going to go over some of the things that we've worked on. So credit is not free money. This is going to go into the advantages and disadvantages that we were just thinking about. So safer than cash was one that really surprised me. But if you think about it, if you have cash and somebody robs you, wah-wah, you're out of luck. But if somebody steals your credit card, there's insurance on that. And you can go back to the bank and say, oh my God, I lost my credit card on this day. And they can say, oh, all the purchases made since that day, we're paying you back for those. You don't have to worry about that. So I see why it says safer than cash. I just wanted to clarify exactly what that meant, Useful in emergencies. So if you have a big line of credit that you haven't spent and you have an emergency where you lose your job or you have a medical expense or you have, you need to fix your car or whatever, then that $400 emergency, you don't need $400 cash for that if you have credit, and then you can kind of pay it off over time. It's another way of doing things. Convenient for buying online and for your phone. You can put it on your Apple Pay and stuff like that. Can't really do that with cash, Can't really buy online things with cash anymore. Cash isn't king anymore, I guess. And responsible use of credit builds you good credit history. And then you can buy anything you want. There you go. Here's the disadvantages. You can spend more than with cash. If you have cash, one thing I used to do is I would take my spending money, like my fun money, out of the bank right when I, got my paycheck, and I'd be like, I'm not going to spend any more than this. I'm only going to spend this, and when I'm out, I'm out. That didn't work very well. But you can see how if you don't do something like that and you're just kind of swiping all the time, you can end up accidentally spending more than you can had you just been trying to spend with cash. May pay extra for use of borrowed money. So one thing I didn't hear anybody say when we're talking about disadvantages was interest. That's what interest is. So you're basically paying this extra little percentage of the principal or however much you spent for the privilege of borrowing somebody else's money. So if you have a credit card that has 15% interest, which is real common, that's actually not a bad interest rate, and you spend $100 on it, then the 15% is you're paying $15 of that back to somebody for the privilege of borrowing their $100. So instead of $100, you pay $115 back. Make sense? So irresponsible use can damage your credit score. So if you're not making your on-time payments and everything like that, and we'll go into what are the components of a credit score in a little bit here. So what is a credit score? A credit score is a number that represents a snapshot of your credit worthiness. Has anybody heard of Credit Karma? It's a little app, that tells you at any given time, it tells you what your credit score is, and it has identity theft protections and all kinds of fun things like that. And a FICO score is actually a little bit different. I was interested to know, where was it? FICO, anybody know what FICO stands for? I had no idea. That's what you would think. It had something to do with that. But it's actually Fair Isaacs Corporation. I guess they were the first one to invent FICO scores. So it's a very specific number. And your FICO score is apparently not the same as what's on Credit Karma. But Credit Karma is good at informing you of what that score is. You actually have 3 credit scores from 3 different credit bureaus, which is Equifax, Experian, and TransUnion. So they'll each give you a score. They're independent credit monitoring agencies, and usually when somebody checks your credit for a phone or a rental or something like that, they'll either check one or they'll check all 3, and they can be different. So whole different thing. All this stuff I never knew about credit. Let's see. What is a credit score? Anything else? Who cares? You do. So this gives you a little example of what's a good credit score. So range 850, above 700 is really excellent. Actually, I found out a couple of years ago you can have a credit score in like the 900s if you have a really, really, really big line of credit or a black card or something like that, and you pay it off every month. You can actually have in the 900s credit score, which is mind-blowing to me. Yes?
So if you have 0 credit, like no credit at all, that equals bad credit because the government doesn't know that they can trust you with paying back money, right?
It's true.
It's kind of not fair though, like when you haven't even gotten a chance to
I know.
credit.
Isn't that super unfair? Yeah, so like you would think, you know, if you have never gotten yourself into credit trouble by never having a credit card, you have great credit, right? No, you don't. You have no credit and you're like an untested risk and nobody wants to lend you any money whatsoever, ever. You can do things called, this is not in the text, but here's a couple things you can do if you have no credit and you want to start building credit. You can ask for a secured credit card, which is where you give the bank $300 and then you have a $300 line of credit with your own money, which is, it's kind of annoying because you're like, that's my money. I should just be able to do whatever I want, but it's how you build credit. The other thing you can do is student loans. So I'm not here to get anybody into crazy debt. However, student loans are not the worst thing in the world, especially if you're only borrowing what you want. So we were talking about 15% credit card interest rate, right? And that was a pretty good rate. Credit card interest rates range anywhere between like 12 is the lowest I've seen recently, and in the 30s, 30%, 33% interest is a really bad one, because then for every $100 you borrow, you got to pay somebody $130 back. That's not good. That's a lot, you know. A student loan is either 0% interest or 4.5% interest, depending on the type of loan that you get. So way, way, way better. So if you plan for your spending and you see on your budget, it's looking all red, and I'm not going to be able to make my expenses this month, how am I going to stay in school? Student loan might not be the worst option ever, you know. So that's something you can always talk to the financial aid office about if you're interested. Really, we would much rather that you get a little bit of debt and be able to finish your education here, have a completion so you have a good job to pay it off, than just have to drop out of school. One reason for this whole module, this whole credit and budgeting thing that I'm showing you right now, it's a pilot from the Chancellor's office that Scott was talking about, because that same survey we talked about at the beginning of the class indicated that students will drop out at higher rates due to perceived financial worries. Not even real financial worries, but like, oh man, I don't know if I have enough money to make my rent next month. I better drop out of school so I can get a job. This is not that uncommon of a situation. So we want to do our best to show you guys how to use credit properly and how to use budgeting correctly and know where the resources are that you can take advantage of if you get into trouble. So let's move on a little bit, unless you guys have questions.
I just wanted to say, like, you can also build your credit by joining a credit union. That's what I did, and then
that was pretty helpful. I joined a credit union a couple years ago, and I had just done, Scott and I were talking about debt consolidation. I had done a debt consolidation plan. I had a bunch of medical bills and stuff, didn't have a real good job to pay it off and stuff, so you get with these companies that consolidate it, and they let you make little teeny payments. They negotiate littler payments with your creditors until it's all paid off. And it takes a couple of years, but after that I had zero credit. I was in that position. And nobody gave me a credit card. And I went to a credit union, and they kind of treat you a little bit more like a human and not like a number. And they gave me a really small credit card, like $250. That way I could start building up credit a little bit more. And it wasn't a secured one. I didn't have to give them any money for it. But they were like, oh, we see that, you know, you have credit history and you're doing pretty good on your payments. They looked at my credit reports and everything like that. And they're like, okay, we'll do this for you. So that's a really good suggestion. Thank you. Anybody else have any questions or suggestions? All right, so I'll go ahead and move on, and we'll talk about what makes up your credit score. So can you guys see the colors okay there? So 35%, the blue is on-time payments. So has anybody ever looked at their credit report before? I have. So if you can go and you can order a free one from each of those three creditors, on annualcreditreport.com. You can do it once a year for free, and it'll show you your entire credit report, and the credit report has all of your payments on all of your creditors that you've ever made, like say your phone bill, your rent, your if you have any utilities in your name or anything, and it goes back over the past 7 years of monthly on-time payments, and it just says whether it was on time or not. Not like 1 day late or 20 days late, on time or not on time, yes or no. So that's a big part of it, and a big part of your credit score there is in your control. And that other really big part, the 30%, is capacity used or your credit line used. So say you have 2 credit cards, each of them are $500. If you have one of them already spent to the max and you have one of them you've never spent anything in, then you have 50% credit usage, right? It's best to try to keep it below 30% is what I've heard for, maximizing your credit score. Those other little pieces of the pie there, length of credit history is a thing. So if you have a credit card, you pay it all off. They say don't close that. Just leave it open and leave it paid off. Because the length of your credit history matters. And then check this out as well. So say, where's your pen? Where's your pens here? Here we go. So say you've got 3 credit cards. You've got, this has no ink in it. Here, there's a black one over here. Say you've got credit card A, and credit card A has 500 on it, and you've got credit card B that has 500 on it, and you've got credit card C, it has a $500 limit, but you paid it all off. So this is like think about your GPA, okay? This is like having an F, an F, and an A. So this one is bringing your whole credit score up. And then say you start working on this one, because say this one has like that horrible 30% interest rate. You're like, I need to get rid of that. And you pay off half of it. Okay, so now you have 250. Now this one's like a C and an A. And this is bringing your whole credit score GPA up to have an account that's open, but has more on the credit limit that you don't spend. So just to give you an idea of what length of time means for your credit score and how it factors in. And then the last 2, new credit. So it's good to have kind of a mix, and types of credit, new credit and types of credit. So if you've got the same old credit cards that you've had forever, apparently that's like going against your credit score a little bit. And if you only have, say, a credit card, but you don't have any car loan, you don't have a student loan, you don't have this, you don't have that, apparently that brings down your credit score, but not that much. Those are like 10%. They're not really big. The biggest things and the ones that are most in our control are the payments on time and not using super much of your credit card capacity. Do you have any questions about that? All right, moving on. What's in your credit report? There's personal information, so it's important not to just let it out and let everybody get it. Account information. Your credit report actually has every single account you've ever had. Even the savings account your parents started for you when you were a kid, they all kind of accumulate there. Collection accounts, so if you're behind on bills or something like that, it's been sent to creditor or anything, that's going to be on there as well. And there's a whole negative item section that they might be under. There's ways that you can challenge those. If you're like, oh, wait a minute, that guy right there, Bob's creditor, I paid him off already. Why is it still on here? There's actually ways that you can dispute that if it's already been paid off. The credit companies are not 100% right on a lot of the time. There's public records such as bankruptcies, judgments, liens, which are basically the same thing but from either the court or the government, and credit inquiries. So anytime anyone checks your credit to see if you're good to get the new iPhone or checks your credit to see if they want you to live in this rental or not, that all goes on there as well. How long do some of these items stay on there, you might be wondering. Unpaid student loans, if you default on a student loan, that stays there forever. So student loans are they're good if you, like I said, need to borrow minimally while you're in school, but they're real bad if you don't pay them. You can't get rid of a student loan in bankruptcy. There's 2 ways to get rid of your student loan. Number 1 is if a doctor says you're totally and permanently disabled. Number 2 is if you die. That's it. No bankruptcies, no, anything like that. No other way to get rid of them. A bankruptcy actually stays on your credit for 10 years. A lot of people think it's 7 years. It's actually a little bit more. And also that's kind of flexible. If you pay off all your creditors in your bankruptcy early, it might be less. If you don't, it might be more. Collections, so those negative or adverse accounts that go to collectors. 7 years plus 180 days. So even if you've already paid them off, it might still be on your credit report, but it should stay 0. But even if it stays 0, it's going to stay on your credit report for quite a while. Even those late payments, so all the monthly payments I told you that are on there for all the last 7 years and they're yes on time or no not on time, that's on there for 7 years. Same with repossessions. And credit inquiries are only on there for 2 years. In my experience, sometimes it's been a little bit less as well. So if somebody checks your credit to see what's going on with, if they want you to have a rental, if they want you to have a phone, mortgage, anything like that. Any questions about any of these things? All right, so we'll move on to this one, to good debt and bad debt. So remember when I was talking about good debt, what kind of separates that from bad debt? Just a couple little things. So the good debt is something that usually has some kind of additional benefit to you. So when we're talking about student loans, that's actually considered good debt in a way because from those student loans, hopefully you get a completion. You get an associate's or a bachelor's or hopefully both. And that is a real big benefit to you and your future ability for earnings. A home is also kind of in the good debt category. And that's because it's something that hopefully will appreciate. It's a really large purchase and hopefully it's going to keep, appreciating and actually adding more equity. As you pay it off, you're adding to the equity of your house, so that's actually more money is yours. It's almost like putting it in the bank. The disadvantage is if we have an economic crash, so if housing prices all just kind of tank because nobody can afford to buy houses. So even there, with the good debt stuff, you have to be careful because like we were talking about with student loans, if you default on your loans and you don't pay them for 270 days or more, it gets real bad. So good and bad are kind of relative terms. It means different things for everybody's situation. But the ones that they put in the bad debt category are those ones that kind of make you a little less creditworthy, and they're things that have decreased value over time. So a house hopefully has increased value over time. A cupcake, the value is gone once you eat that cupcake. No more value. A car, the car, once you drive it off the brand new car lot, cut half of its value, So a car even is not necessarily, a really good reason to be in debt, except for the value that it brings to us of actually being able to get from place to place, and hopefully not having to pay too much for your registration or, those repairs and everything like that. So some debt can add to, can snowball into more debt, right? A vacation. Anybody ever swiped a credit card through to go on a vacation? It's probably not a very good idea because the value of that vacation is pretty much gone after you post your Instagram pictures or whatever. And everybody's all and then they forget about it. And so have you, and you're back to work, trying to get back into the swing of things. So hopefully that gives you a little bit of an idea, but again, it's going to be something that's going to mean different things to different people. So here's examples of really, really, really bad debt. And actually, they're kind of described as predatory because really somebody else is making a lot of money off you when you go and borrow this kind of money. Has anybody ever heard of payday loans or used a payday loan? So payday loan is, you remember when we were talking about you have more month than money? Maybe you get down to right now, the 14th of the month, and you're like, oh God, I spent my whole paycheck. I don't know what I'm going to do. But I have a paycheck coming next month. Maybe I can go get a payday loan. Generally, it's not the best idea because they have these hidden interest charges. So you have a finance charge, but you might also have interest tacked onto that. So when you go and you get your payday loan money, you go and you give them your paycheck, you could still end up being in debt depending on the interest rate. So that's considered a predatory loan. Has anybody ever heard of a vehicle title loan? Yeah.
I've heard of it. I don't know.
So what that means, a vehicle title loan is where you give somebody the title of your car that's all paid off, if you have an all paid off car, and they will give you some money, and if you don't pay it back, they will take your car. Yeah. So it's maybe not the best idea, and on top of it, it has kind of high interest as well, so you're not just paying off the principal that you borrowed, you're also going to pay off maybe $600 in interest, which is kind of a lot. So you're paying back $1,600 if you borrowed $1,000. That's kind of, That's a really high loan. It's worse than a credit card. It's way worse than a student loan. So you don't just have one option. You have multiple options when you're looking for additional money if you're getting in a tight spot. And some are better than others. So we're coming down to the end of this. So what, now what? So we have a couple of options for moving forward. I strongly recommend for you guys to check out some of those budgeting apps, and that'll help you a little bit. You can always come and talk to us in the financial aid office if you have questions about any kind of financial stuffs. You can come talk to Rosie, who works over there with us. Got plenty of friendly people there willing to help you out. We also have a texting program connected to this class, this particular class on budgeting and credit. I'm going to pass out the surveys. And if you guys could please complete the survey, no matter what, that would be great. But if you would like to opt in and receive the extra text, they're just little reminders. So it's going to say it's from me, I think, and it's going to say, hey, Rosie, it's Naomi, and have you checked on your credit score lately? Or have you downloaded that budgeting app? Or have you looked at your credit report? So just little reminders just to kind of keep you guys on track if you're interested in kind of continuing with this curriculum. Let's see if there's anything else here. So here's a couple of little tips. Little tips for wrapping everything up. Managing money is not the easiest thing in the world, and this is going to be different for all of us. So there's not one way to do this. There's several ways to do it, and it's kind of hard to figure out what's the right way for you. But if you need any help, financial aid's always here to help. And anybody have any questions before I pass out the survey? Who has a question? No? You know what? I'm going to give you guys another option, too. We're ending a little bit early. Yeah, 15, 20 minutes early. Yeah, I'm happy to hang out here for a little bit in case anybody has any kind of questions they don't really want to air out to the whole room, any kind of personal financial questions. I'm happy to help with that. So I'll wait for a little bit to get the survey back. And then if you guys are interested in receiving the text messages, complete the bottom portion for the opt-in. If you're not, just complete the top portion and you're good.
Naomi, for coming in today.
Thank you.
So real quick for next week,